There we go. Looks like we're live now. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. If you usually attend our webinars, you might notice that I'm not Chuck. My name is Jessica Cook, and you might know me as the Community Content Manager for Power BI, Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow. So today's webinar is Simply Compelling, 7 Tips to Better Visualization Design, and it's being presented by Miranda Lee, who's the Design and Data Visualization Lead here at Microsoft. Miranda evangelizes data visualization, design best practices, and storytelling through webinars, blogging, coaching, and conducting joint projects with internal Microsoft employees. She's authored hundreds of exemplary data visualization examples, and today she's going to give us an introduction to design, concepts, and basic factors. And I've seen pieces of this presentation before. It's great, and I think you'll really love it. So one more thing before I give the floor to Miranda. I'll be watching the live chat here on our YouTube page. So if you have a question, please go ahead and ask, and I'll gather them up and pose them to Miranda at appropriate intervals. So with that, I'm going to cede the floor over to Miranda. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for the introduction, Jessica. This is awesome to be here today. As Jessica said, I spent a lot of years in Tableau software, and now I'm really fortunate to be in Microsoft for over a year. So I am super excited to be here and share some tips that I have learned in the past few years by doing a lot of front-facing design work for both companies. So as as my title said, it's simply compelling. The reason I use this title is really, in the past few, actually a year, I'm in Microsoft, and also the years I'm in Tableau, I've seen a lot of dashboard being designed as super complicated. So I actually thinking, if we want to make impact, we actually have to think the reverse ways. So this is kind of where I'm coming from in terms of this intro. So I really wanted to kind of invite all of us to thinking about how can we design things that is simple and yet powerful. So that's kind of the focus of this talk. So before I dive into detail, I want to kind of just touch what has changed in past many years in terms of data presentation. So if you're thinking about it, in the old days, 100 years ago, people are already using data visuals. So you have ledgers and you have numbers, and people use simple little visuals. So they hand draw those visuals, and it's really difficult and take them a really long time and take a lot of skills to draw those visuals. So that's why we don't see many. And now, of course, Excel has revolutionized the process and making things really easy. You got a lot of a spreadsheet, but some charts that blend in. But still, the majority of the thing we see is really spreadsheet. When we see some visuals, but not the intensive degree of visual as we see today with Power BI. So if you look at the Power BI interface nowadays, you see 90% visuals or even more. Visual after visual, visual after visual. So I just want to touch several points about these changes and what it means to us as a designer or as an author or as an analyst. So when we, this visual actually really good because it helps customers to understand things much quicker and much easier. That's why these visuals are so popular and so hot. So another thing is really with this opportunity, you produce a lot of visuals. Everybody's on the learning curve. So are we doing the right visual? Are we communicating the right information? Is also kind of a big challenge here. So we have a lot of opportunities. And also, I just want to touch, like, the audience has changed. In the past, if you're thinking about old days and Excel days, most of the consumers are executives, are the people who are in management, and the people who are actually trained to read numbers or to read data and to read critically about data. Now we're talking about visual for everyone. It doesn't matter you are management or frontline employees, or you're a sales manager, marketing manager, or you're a stay-at-home mom. We made visuals so that more people can consume it. So that actually, put a lot of a challenge on us as authors. We constantly have to think about innovative ways to actually communicate information to a very diverse number of audience. So as I said, we have a lot of opportunities ahead of us, but there are some challenges here. So we have a lot more design choices nowadays than we have ever been in the past. You got a dashboard, you got reports, you got navigation, you got layer navigation, you got so many different colors to choose from. You have interaction design, filters, filter by chart. There are so many different choices you need to consider in order to design a really good visual. So all those choices actually, you know, have to kind of it give us options, but also kind of provide challenges. So kind of have to think about through those things. So it's really easy to confuse customers. You know, like a lot of customers give feedbacks to us is that they couldn't find stuff. Or the things that are on the report is overwhelming. You know, it takes a lot of time to find what is really relevant to them. So there, and also insights are buried. Like for example, sometimes I got customers come to us and said, you know, this is good, but where's the actionable items? Where are the piece of insight I can find that I can really help me do my job better, or help me to get more customers? So those actionable insights a lot of times are missing in our report. So challenge. So we have too much data. I mean, we are actually at the beginning of this big curve. If you think about this, you know, data visualization wave, you know, started from a few years back, starting from Tableau and ClickView, and now Power BI has been 2 years. We're at the beginning of this curve, but people has already been overwhelmed. A lot of users, they got too much data. You know, and I visualize as a bell curve here. If a person being given a little bit data really relevant, they are excited, right? But once you give them a huge amount of data, they get lost. And how can we find that curve? How can we find the right amount so that we can give the people the right information to the right people at the right time? So that's why I actually bring up this second chart is really the relevancy. So if you think about data design is really different from graphic design or any other type of design. Is really like the relevancy become one of the key factor in data visualization design, and whether or not you can distill information and then really get rid of all the things that is irrelevant is art. So this is where we are here today. You know, here today, and I'm thinking, you know, we can talk through things. You know, it's not what you don't have to take everything I said today, but I think it's a thought starter. You know, at least, you know, my hope is that at least I can get you try to thinking about things differently than you have been in the past. So that's kind of the purpose today. Was talk through a few points that I think is very important. So I hope you can take away and think about it. So my first question to everybody is really, what is effective data visualization? You know, in order to produce it, you're gonna have to understand what it is. And I actually test this with many of my, you know, our employees here in Microsoft. And, you know, I asked the question, if you ask 100 people, you might have 100 answers. However, it is relatively easy or straightforward to answer the question, what makes data visualization impactful? I mean, that's why we're doing this. We're doing visualization because we want to create business impact or social impact. So what makes data visualization impactful? So I wanted to, you know, many of you might have seen this example, but I wanted to bring this example really to kind of raise a specific point. So bear with me if you have seen this before. Jon Snow, he lived 100, you know, this is 150, 160 years ago almost. So in 1854, there was a cholera outbreak in London. So a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on, and the popular belief was that cholera was caused by air. It's transmitted by air. So a lot of people got sick and they went to hospital, they died, and nobody could figure out why. But Jon Snow really started this initiative. He went to door and gathered data. And because he had a assumption, he said, you know, maybe it's not because air. So that assumption lead him to this research. And he actually later on proved that cholera was caused by this water pump. You see the little black dot right on the broad street, the little black dot? It's a water pump. So the tally, the little bar chart here, and every single tally equals a person died. So the closer people lived closer to the water pump, more people died. So he was able to convince the authority to shut down the water pump, will save a lot of lives, and you know, it was a really big social impact at the time. And he also published this visualization in the journals. So the reason I want to mention this is really, you're thinking about the visualization itself. It's really simple. It's so simple that you can really go through this in a couple of minutes and you understand it. So, and thinking about what if Jon Snow give you a 10-page report about how he discovered this problem. And this insight would have been buried. And it would be harder to convince the authority if he has 10 pages of report instead of just this one visual. So he goes through a significant reduction process and get rid of all the things that is irrelevant and only bring this relevant visual to the forefront. So you're thinking about like what, we come back to our question, what makes data visualization impactful? So you might have different answers, and you're welcome to type in your answers. So Jessica can, and we'll look into that, and maybe we'll look into that. Maybe Jessica can read out your comments. But in my personal observation, I feel like the things that make visualization very impactful have several elements into it. Number one, it has to solve a particular problem. It has to serve a particular purpose, right? So, and then the second one is simple, clear, and engaging presentation. And I really want to specify the several word here. It's really simple, and it's really clear, and it's really engaging presentation. Now, if you're thinking about technical design of visualization, that's really the simple, clear, engaging communication. Of course, in order to solve, make impact, you're going to have to talk to the right people at the right time. And otherwise, nobody's going to adopt your presentation, your data anyway. So there's this element of, so that's why I actually highlighted this one. So that is effective visualizations. But in order to get to where it should be, a process there's a lengthy process you have to go through in order to get to where you need to be. So I break it down a little bit. So that's kind of a high level one. But now if I break it down and say, okay, what is a simple, clear, engaging communication? So I actually break down into little details here. I said, okay, the red bullet point here, those are kind of very scenario based, and I'm not going to really talk about this today because I don't have a specific business scenario that I can talk to you today, but I'm going to introduce some concept for you to think about it. So have a clear purpose and business solving a high degree of relevancy. So that really depends on your business context. Always put your visualization into the business context and thinking about how can you make that work. But here in this particular talk, I wanted to really touch the other aspect of the data visualization design. And then, like alignment, align your intent with your visuals, and then simple and self-describing and easy to understand, easy to navigate, have a good storyline and flow, have the right chart for the right data. So we will talk, that part a little bit because those are kind of technical, easy to grab. On the right side, I list this. This is actually a user experience. The top one is actually a user experience book. It's called Don't Make Me Think. It's one of the very well-written user experience book. It's really comes down to the user experience. If you're producing visualization for like lots of users, 100 users, right? So the user experience really impact how they consume your data. If there's the obvious frustrations they have, they can't find their stuff, they give up. And then if they give up, you lose your opportunity to make impact. So those are kind of the obvious things that we need to think, like, how can we avoid that? The filter doesn't work or work the wrong way. So that kind of element we need to kind of at least try to eliminate. So before I talk about tips and how to design, I wanted to touch a little bit about the environment, about the Power BI environment, and what the difference between reports and dashboard and how you can leverage them in your design process so that your report is a little bit easier. So you're thinking about the report, the difference between report and dashboard. So report, you build it on desktop. And then the dashboard is you pin the file over to Power BI services. So you can't really save those things. But for the desktop file, you can always save it. And you have full authoring capacity. You have a lot of interactivities. You have all your drill downs. But once you get to the dashboard, you lose that capacity. So it's not fully interactive. I mean, unless you pin live tiles, and that's still possible. But if you pin too many live tiles, your performance is going to slow down because Power BI has to live query all these tiles behind it, so that your users are going to have experience really slow query process. However, the dashboard does has a really clear advantage here is really when you have multiple data sources. Like for example, you have 5 different reports, and they are building on top of different databases, and you don't really want to combine those databases because databases become really big. And that's when you can ping over the dashboard and give consolidate those insights without having to go through the process of consolidating those data. So that's one scenario that dashboard can be extremely helpful. A second thing that can be really helpful is really for high-level overviews for executives, for high-level management. For example, if a GM or general manager, he manages a big team, he's trying to track all the metrics in your team, and those metrics are hosted through different report unit. And if you can tile over those high-level metrics, the executives can really have a really quick glance about what's going on across the board very quickly. And dashboard can accommodate a lot more views on the single page than the report does. So I'll go through the little details later, but I think it's good to know that you have that background in mind when we talk about design. So I'm gonna, in the next session, I'm gonna go through some tips about how you can improve the effectiveness of your data visualizations. Of course, number one, I quote this again, I want to make a different point here, is really like try to study your customers and their struggles. The more you understand your customers and what kind of issues they are facing and struggle with, the more valuable you are in terms of providing visuals to solve their problems. So I just want to touch this very quick, and I will move to the next one. This one, I really wanted to kind of put this out there really for us to think about it, because I realized that, here I work with a lot of internal analysts too. So I think the tendency is we always just, we got the data, we're so excited, and the tool is so easy. We can just boom, 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 few minutes, we generate tons of visuals. So I say, stack back, and then, it's good to have explorations, and it's really nice. I actually highly encourage everybody to leverage the easy tool to really explore the data. You can twist and, using different chart, using different views, and so that you can see information very quickly and see what is, what's valuable to your business. But when you finally try to make a presentation, make a final report, and always thinking about, okay, now I explore the data, I might have 50, 40, or 35 pages or tabs. And then what kind of things I can picking out? I'm going to cherry pick all the things that is really relevant to this presentation. Treat every final report as a presentation. And have your audience in mind, and then build that data that way. Instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to just visualize every dimension in my visual and then just be done with it. So always think high level and cut. And I went to graduate school years ago. My teacher always said, you need to learn how to, you need to kill your darlings. I was like, okay, what's that supposed to mean? So over the years, I learned to cut things down, and I actually later on find it was super, super, super important to cut things down. The only way you can make emphasis on things is really to cut things down. So always thinking about what can you cut to make your report more relevant. So in this third session, this session is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to actually go through several pages to go through these things one by one. So I will say first pinpoint your purpose and type, and then decide your style. Because I'm going to go through this one by one, because your style of visualization is highly tied with what's your purpose and what type of analysis you're doing. So the first type, I call it the small boutique style, which means very small scale. It might be one page, one tab in the report, or maximum two tabs. But it's highly vetted. It's really focused on particularly problem solving. On the right here, I actually listed out here. You can read it later. I'm going to distribute this slide later. So predictive analysis, problem solving, or somebody have a specific question you're trying to answer it, or some simple tracking system. One of my coworkers producing a whale tracking. So in Puget Sound, it's really popular to go watch the whales. But where the whales are, and how can we guide people to where the whales are so that people can be more targeted on, going to those places? It's just one single map to track the whales, right? Super simple. Certain performance tracking for business executives, and some executives, they only prefer simple things. Don't give me 5 pages, just give me one. So in those scenarios, we have to really thinking about the characteristics of this audience and how can we design so that we fit this need. So I think the characteristic of this group is really, you have very specific users and you have very specific business problems you try to address, and you surface very specific insights so that you can help your customers to resolve those problems. So the design, in terms of design, is really like small scale visualizations, very, very little elements. The design, a lot of times, focus on insights rather than explorations. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the difference between insight and exploration. So in the modern tool, we actually use a lot of filters. The filter is one of the very major features in modern visualization tools. But features, this filters can sometimes set you back. The reason I said that because sometimes you use too many filters, customers won't. The insight is buried in the filters. So the customers will have to click many times to find what insight is actually relevant to them. So when I see you surface the insight, it's like you as an analyst, we as analysts, sometimes we actually click around and find what the insights are, and we try to surface that. Sometimes it can be a report that you focus on, using the titles and really kind of distill the insight. That's why storytelling or story point feature, become a big demand in modern storytelling. Storytelling is about really the insight, presenting what's inside, not about the explorations, right? And then other people using PowerPoint presentation or newsletter to kind of surface the insight. So those are kind of, I thought I just kind of a side note right here. And then navigation and categorization are very crucial because you have small scale, you don't have a lot of things, so you don't have to really worry about the categorization or navigation because it's not a big issue here. The second I wanted to talk about is the standard report we see most of the scenarios. In Microsoft too, I've seen most of the scenarios people actually focus on this. And even though I actually highly encourage you to do the first category because you actually you make a lot of more business impact with the first category. However, there is a huge need in the second category. Is really, I call it the small departmental store. So this one is really like routine report. You have financial report, you have quarterly report, or you provide your team a routine tracking mechanism so that they know how their business is doing in different segments, or self-service BI report. So those type all falls into this category. So for this category, you have broader users. The users could be, like all management at certain level, right? It could be all CEOs, VPs at certain level. It could be the management in the entire department, or it could be all salespeople. Sometimes all the salespeople could potentially share a particular report for what they do. So the user group become more broad, and then the purpose become diffused. So you're not trying to solve a particular problem, but the purpose become a little more wider. So this broader tracking, explore your own insight, find your own information, and then you figure out what's relevant to you, and I will provide you all the filters, and I will provide you all the easy tools to navigate what the insight. So that's a characteristic. So in terms of design, So I actually put down here, you're thinking about the design. So this design style is really common. So basically you have one report, you got, several tabs. Here I got 5 tabs. So I will say, try to not make a report that is more than 5 tabs. If you find yourself to produce a report that is more than 10 tabs, you're gonna really have to take back and thinking about, okay, how can I cut it down so that I can make my report much more tighter and surface the insight much quicker. Or is there a solution I can divide this 10 tab report into 2 so that each report has their own purposes, or each report has their own focuses. So that way you don't get your report super long. Right now, particularly nowadays, everybody's busy. If you give them a 10-page report, everybody get exhausted before they actually, able to spend a lot of time in it to explore the data. So I would say anywhere between 3 to 5 tabs, or 6 tabs is totally fine. But more than that, think twice. And how can you deal with that?
Miranda, if I could just interrupt you here for a second. We had a good question from Antonio, who mentioned that you have a gray spot on the right-hand side of all your examples here. And did you intend that to be something specific to go in that, or just a general area?
Oh, you mean the right side? You mean the
yeah, and all your examples there, you have a gray area, a gray panel, and do you imagine something specific going in that area?
Yeah, so this is basically this is the style, this kind of visual style about how you're gonna design it. So basically, this area it just laid out, and what type of visual analysis falls into this category of style. So here I describe the characteristics, and here I describe the design. But if you think about your own design, yes, if you have a specific report, in the future, you think, oh, does my report actually falls into this category? So you can really thinking about which portion of your report falls into the category by reading the type of analysis and characteristics and design. So you can reference the design to think about how can I improve my design. If my report falls into this category, I'm doing routine report, I have broad users, all purpose, and I want to build for exploration, then how can I better design it? So this kind of the design bottom portion is really help you to really evaluate your own and how can you improve it. Did I answer your question?
I think so. I think they were actually referring to your 5 example slides there. Under do I need a dashboard, and the gray area you have on the right side of your 5 examples.
You are talking about that. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. You mean this one?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Do you imagine something specific going in there?
Yes. So basically, if you have a views, try to focus on. So usually, if you think about layout on a particular tab, so you try to find a focused view for the tab. Like in this version, the bigger the box is, the more attention you're gonna grab from the audience. So this smaller one will be supporting view, and this one be the main view. So for the little gray bars, I was hoping that we can put the filters in. The reason I put the gray is that a lot of times our filter are blending in with all the other visuals, and sometimes they are scattered. Like for example, you have filters, you have some filter on the top, some filter on the right, and some filter on the left, and some filters here. When you scattered, always think twice, because sometimes people get lost when they see all those filters hanging around everywhere. So try to consolidate. If your filter control the entire tab, try to consolidate into a panel here, and then using a really gentle gray will put a little bit emphasis to the filters, because if thinking about the filters are not gonna overpower. It's not a good idea to overpower the tab with filters. However, you can you should bury in your visuals, because if you think about the purpose of the visual is really the wheel for the cars. So if you think about you're driving the cars, in order to drive this car, you're gonna have to have a wheel. So because this type of report are building for exploration, so having easy access or visible panel to basically provide inviting thing for your customers to come in, if you find more insight, come to interact with me. So it's really kind of inviting without overpowering the other visuals.
I think that answered the question. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood it. Okay, so here's another one I called the mall style. This one is really big scale. I actually seeing, this is what I said, if you producing the purpose of the dashboard, if you revisit, the advantage of the dashboard. So how can you take advantage of the purpose of the dashboard and thinking about how can I leverage the best ability of this dashboard? So I call it mall style. I'm thinking about, you go to malls and there's a lot of different stores in the mall, but within the mall there's different information units and product inside, right? It's really multi-layer. So one of the scenarios that really good when you start using mall style is really you try to kind of provide a lot of navigation to your data. For example, you have 5 different reports, or maybe you have 10 different reports, but your management said, you know what, I want a consolidated view about all the key metrics that like maybe 1 or 2 key metrics in per report, and I want to be able to see those at one spot. So that's when it's super helpful to build a mall style visualization by leveraging the advantage of the dashboard. So here basically, say for example, you have all the data here. At the bottom, you have little cubes of data. You consolidate the data, you build a report, and the report can be anywhere between 2 tabs, 3 tabs, or 5 tabs. And then on top of it, you can build a report. You can build a dashboard on top. But bear in mind, in this scenario, organization become super important. Categorizing things and organizing them and provide grouping on your dashboard becomes super important, because I have seen a lot of people building report dashboard here, and things just lying around loose. There's no organization. It's like you go to a mall, there's everything is a big mess there, and how the user is going to navigate if there's no navigation. So because this type of analysis, we're going to be really careful and really specifically focus on how can I build some sort of navigation that can lead my users to where they need to be. So the navigation becomes very important, and then less focus on solving specific problem, but more focus on navigation and categorization. So that's why I had, using the text box or using graphics. I've seen people using both ways, and sometimes people just using a text box on the right, and then just see what category this is. And then on the left, you can use different visuals like bar chart, line chart, or whatever. But here you got a text box. You can use text box. You can use graphics. You can producing a little image, and then you can insert that image into a text box or plug in directly there, so that it provide a categorization here. And some people also using this is a kind of organizing on the right. I also see people organize session by session, like scroll down version. You're on the top portion is certain categories, and then the second session is certain categories. So it's super important to really thinking about how can I provide some visual cues for my users so that they have an easy time to navigate. Special scenarios. So I'm not sure how many people in the audience who producing visualization for executives. So for executives is really, and I want to mention this because it's super important. This comes down to like you always think about your audience when you're producing any visual. So for example, for executives, they're busy. They're really busy. For them, it's really important that you surface the insight. Focus on surface insight rather than exploration, because executives, the reason they are being executive because they actually have people underneath them to help them to explore the data. So they don't have time to actually spend hours and hours to see what's relevant to the business. So surface what is very important to the executive is super important. insight, and insight. So second point, and I think is very important for the executives, is really quick and easy is super important. Like for example, either have less tabs on the report, or have using a dashboard that have all the insight on the surface so that they can quickly glance, in 2 minutes, and they will understand how the business goes. So I've seen people doing both ways. If you want a lot of, you want some, you want a combination, you want to give them the option to drill down, but you also want to surface the insight really quickly. So you cherry pick all those charts that is really relevant to the executive, and then you can use report style. That's fine, but you can also leverage the dashboard, and then you have all the key metrics that lay up on the top, so that they can go in and then find out what is going on with business in few seconds. And then another dangerous thing I wanted to kind of mention is sometimes for executives, usually we're just trying to take the shortcut. We said, oh, I already have this report. I'm just gonna stuck this together. And then what happened with the executives is when they drill down, they get lost. So because there's too many things under the hood. So I was saying, if you do producing for executives, take the time to clean up your underneath data. You always think another step further. It's like, okay, if I'm executive, I see the top metrics, what I want to know next. Why, first, if I bother to click on this tile, what information I should find that is relevant. So I would say if you do a 2 level down, for example, I always encourage people to find the business drivers for any metrics. For example, if you see, like for example, if the monthly active users is one of the top metrics your executive look at every month. So what, and you talk to your financial department or your business department, and then what kind of business drivers that they look at in order to make this number. So that's what's really relevant. So if the executive, they look at numbers, they want to say, okay, I missed my number. Oh, I got a really good trend on this number. The number one thing they're gonna go look down is really what business drivers are actually driving this trend. So that's what really relevant to the executive. It's really important to find out what the business drivers is so that you can put on the second level. So second level, I think is pretty good. So don't build too many levels down. So just reduce the complications. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about the executive scenario. Let me go down to the next one. Why am I not going down anymore? Hey, Jessica. Hey, Jessica.
Hello.
Why am my slide doesn't go down anymore?
That I'm not sure of. Can you
okay.
go to full screen? We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here.
Oh, got it. Okay, fixed it.
We're back on track.
Okay, got it. So another tip I wanted to give to you all is really choose the chart types with audience in mind. If you design for people who has a lot of data background, you can choose more statistical, sophisticated chart. But if you produce something for salespeople who are not used to read a lot of a difficult chart, choose the relatively easy ones. For example, here I actually list out a few that is straightforward. If you're doing trend lines, you use a line chart. If you're doing ranking, try to use bar chart. If you try to do some sort of correlation analysis, try to use scatter plot. And tree map is really good for part to whole analysis. Inferno chart is really good, like to see, like for example, you have a sales channel. You do marketing, right? You do marketing. You send out your first batch of emails, and then when you go to the second stage, you're down to from 100,000 to 50,000 emails. And then you go to the sales funnel, and it comes down to 20,000 emails. So basically every stage you go to and your funnel get smaller and smaller. But it actually let you to see how the funnel goes. It's really good for that analysis. So I've seen some people using funnel chart to replace bar chart. So I kind of wanted to put a warning there, because usually that's not the best usage of a funnel chart. This is really different from bar chart. So we have 15 minutes left. Let me go a little bit faster for the next few slots. Okay. So I want to kind of go through a very quick exercise here. So this is a really small data set. If you can see, I got region, I got actual, I got budget. So this is kind of refer back to my earlier point about you have so many options. Like in the past, if you want to do a crosstab, hey, this is really straightforward, I'm done. But now think about visualization and think about how many choices you have with this one. We're going to visualize this a single crosstab here. So I can do a chart like this, in series, and I have all this laid out really nicely. Or I can do a line chart, or bar chart, a combo chart, side-by-side bars, up and down, side by side, and bullet chart, plus another bullet chart. So this is all the options you have. So the question is, with all these options, which one are you going to pick? Which one are you going to pick? And you think, I'm going to use this one because I think this one is more effective, right? So of course, sometimes it comes to audience preferences, but there are also best practice in this. For example, the line chart is definitely a no-no here. Why? Because we're dealing with discrete values. We cannot put a line chart because a line chart usually gives people a feeling of trending, but this is not about trending. It's really about category comparison. So the line chart is really out of the window. Another scenario is like, if you think about this side-by-side bar versus bullet chart, the bullet part is much more condensed. Right, so you got, sometimes it's easy to read and it's more condensed. If you have a lot of categories, less space, you might use the bullet chart because it's really straightforward. And side-by-side bars, it's okay. Some people do use it, and I don't, I don't have, certain scenarios, and you just have to see how that work with the rest of your visuals. So the donut chart on the top, I try to kind of particularly mention that because that one is really good when you try to give a high level, almost like call out numbers. They're not really good for blend in with other things because those attract attentions. Those donut charts attract a lot of attention. So if you put anywhere on your visual, people is going to look there, and that you got to have something really important to say. If there are the key takeaways or very important numbers you want to attract people's attention to, and it's totally fine to use that at the top of the visual and to attract people's attentions. So the rest of the chart type are more blended in. So if you blend it in, and it's a reference chart, you don't want people's eyes go there first and foremost, you can use other chart types and you still explain things and use good support, but without attracting other people's attentions. So every kind of chart choice had their advantages. So I want to throw out here so that you can think about things. Okay, I don't know why I always said. Okay, use color meaningfully. So for example, I got here, this is a dashboard, but you can see so many different color here, and there's a repeating color here, but they mean different things. And then as the audience, the reason I said that because as audience, color, particularly in data design, we encourage to give color meaning. So if you give color meaning, it's easy to read. When I read this, I'm like, okay, a lot of color is pretty, but what they mean to us, it means nothing. Like, it really means nothing to me because I have to go to every single chart, read the color agent, legend, and then consuming that particular chart one by one, because the color doesn't mean anything. Right? But if you look at this one, is that easy? Like, you're able to breathe. It's like, oh, okay, I know. The red is unprofitable. The gray is profitable. So if you think of the title is "Why Are We Losing Money?" That's the title of the report. That's where the authors using this language to actually guide the user's perception assumptions. That the purpose of this particular tab, this particular dashboard, is really to help you to figure out where we're losing money. And then did we find out that really quickly? Oh yes, we found that out in 2 seconds. We know where to look because the red color actually guides us. So I really encourage all of us thinking about how can we use color more meaningfully. Another thing is really being really deliberate about interactions. So first and foremost, like, try to think about what views need to be on what tab. So a lot of times I see people just have views randomly in different tabs. And then the best advantage of Power BI is really the interaction between the views. So when the things are not on the same page, you can't reference things very easily. So be sure that you put all the relevant. For example, if I wanted to find out, so like if I see I have a, like for example here, I'm gonna oh, I don't have another example. For example, I click on taxes. I know taxes is losing money. I click on taxes, and then I'm able to see what's going on with taxes. How much taxes sell in different categories, and then where these taxes sells to, and what kind of product category, and are they profitable or not profitable. So I'm able to find all the supporting data about taxes. So this is a kind of, it enable you to relate information very quickly. So be sure they're on the same tab, and be sure the interactions are intended. So for example here, when I did click taxes, and then everything else is filtered. It's being filtered, right? But this one is highlighted. I'm just like, okay. Is there any reason why others are filtered and this one is highlighted? Another point I want to make is that sometimes when we have highlighted functions in Power BI, it kind of gray out the rest. But because we have some other grays in this visual, we can't really tell, is this highlight or not highlight. So it might create some confusion for the users. It's like, oh, is this highlighting, or why are we having a stack bar instead? Because we have a lot of gray here, right? So that can cause confusion. So I was thinking in this scenario, I would choose to have a filter instead of a highlight. I'm almost done, a couple of minutes. So the last tip I wanted to give is really try to thinking about your publishing medium when you design your dashboard. For example, if you you do it for most of your audience will consume this from desktop or tablet or phone. So for example, most of the analysts would prefer to do their big work and analytical work in the office. But if you design something for the salespeople, they're on the go. They're constantly on the go. They're out to visit the customers, and they're out. So on the phone or tablet is most common use scenario for salespeople. They just need to kind of get some insight very quickly while they're actually meeting their customers. So I wanted to kind of highlight on some difference between this several medium, so that you can think about when you design, what should you consider in order to have better design. So obviously, if you have a desktop, you have a big, large screen, even if you have a big visualization, it may take some people some effort to go through, but it's not a big deal. But if people on the phone, and you have a dashboard or report and many different layers and many different metrics, it takes a very long time for people to go through because the screen size is so small. And on top of it, the people who try to get insight from the phone will most likely not interested in reading big report on the phone. So they are more interested in snippet and quick insights. So you're thinking about a 20-page report. Will people actually stay on their phone for an hour analyzing things on the phone? Really small chance. So if we can really focus on quick insights and surface those insights and building small scale visualization for the phone, leverage that medium to provide better insight to your customer, you can make a bigger impact to your mobile customers. So obviously, I said, earlier said that, cut. When you cut down, make effort, cut down visualizations in general, already, if you're working on the phone, you have to trim down your content significantly further. And thinking about what is really matters to your audience that is on the go, and how can we provide something that they can get quick insight. So another thing is really touching and not touching. So touching screen. So on the desktop, you don't really have to think about it. Even if people don't touch, it's fine. They can use the mouse and drill down, whatever. On the phone, try to use a little bit touchable visual chart types. For example, treat map. Treat map provide a filter for you, and it's touchable. You can use tree map to build filters, right? And then even the filter, the regular filter, the slicers, right? The slicers, you can turn the slicers into horizontal and then build some sort of a mechanism behind it so that you can using to touch those filters instead of using those traditional slicers. So it's much more quicker for the people to use in the cell phone. So with that, I think I'm almost done. We got 5 minutes. I will pass this to Jessica. And in case you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Yes, as Miranda said, we're wrapping up here. So if you have questions to ask her, now is your chance. One of the ones people are asking, Naveen and Michael both asked, which visual do you like best for filters, and when do you recommend to use slicers?
So slicers are built for exploration, and then visual type slicer, they are both functional. So they surface the inside very quickly, but they also function as filters. So if you're thinking about it, like, if you wanted to, for example, a tree map, right? Tree map is really good. It's multi-purpose, right? You can surface insight about, like, you see if you put a region on a tree map, right? And then a bar chart, region bar chart or region tree map, like, sales by region. So those give both insight and give options for filters. So I would say, in terms of building visuals, you do want to build in view interactions by leveraging those chart types that is actually give additional things. For filters, particularly on a single tab, for slicers, it's really like, okay, I'm giving you this much insight. You can interact with the visual, but on top of it, you could get even deeper into this insight by leveraging my slicers. So slicer is kind of almost is a kind of a bonus insight, or it's further down. So it's like, you use the chart type survey insight first, and then you have even more after that. Did I answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't see any other questions, so I think we're going to wrap this up. Miranda, thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for being with us today. This was our first community-driven webinar, so we're very excited to have it. I will be back next week, 10 a.m. Pacific time on May 24th with Reed Havens, founder and CEO of Havens Consulting, while he presents Dashboard in an Hour, our high-level rapid introduction to Power BI. So with that, I'm going to wrap everything up. I'll see you next week, and have a great day. Bye.